Alright, well, hello people of the world, and welcome to my channel, Sir Koolzalot. So today I am going to share my review of a product called SECRETSBOX 42H 1-8 insulin pen cooler travel case. So here's a picture of what it looks like and some of the product details that came with it. So let's jump on in. As always, here are my disclaimers. The most important one is that all the data that I'm sharing today is mine, and all of my views are my views and my opinions. I'm on a personal travel quest to find the best coolers for medicine that are out there. So let's keep going. So my main travel objectives are within the state, within California, across the US, and then also frequently to Europe and possibly others. So here's some stock photos of the SECRETSBOX 42H 1-8 insulin pen cooler travel case. I guess it's kind of a long name. So this gives you a kind of a nice overview of what it looks like. You have the classic thermos flask-like container. It also comes with 4 ice sticks. It also comes with an ice cube kind of tray holder, which we'll have a look at that a bit more closely in a minute. And it's got a bunch of different holding capacities and specifications. I think the most interesting thing that I really want to take a look at is its obviously its cooling capabilities and how long it can last. So here's kind of a flash of what the product claims it can do. They have it tested with 1 biogel stick, 2 and 3, but not 4 for whatever reason. So not quite sure, maybe it's a spare or something, because you can't actually get that much capacity when you use all 4. So for today I'm actually just going to really focus in on the 2 biogel packs, because that allows me to carry as many as 3 medicine pens, injector pens, and I'll show more about that in a bit. But for your point of reference here, when the outside temperature is 30 centigrades, which is about 85 Fahrenheit, the product claims that it can last or stay at 2 to 8 degrees centigrade for 18 hours. So 2 to 8 centigrade is 36 to 46 Fahrenheit. And then of course it also claims that it can stay below 26 degrees centigrade for 35 hours. So let's take a look at that. Here's this ice cube tray holder. That one's spec'd to be able to stay cool for about 6 to 8 hours just using ice. I didn't bother to test this directly because I had kind of limited time to kind of take a look at this product and see what it could kind of do at its basics. So here's kind of a nice video that will tour the product. So this is the box that it comes in with. It's pretty uneventful. This comes directly from a Chinese manufacturer actually, and so quite typically this box or carton might be rebranded and sold under various sort of marketing names depending on which company picks it up and sells it. But for the moment it's called SECRETSBOX. So when you open it up, you have a little instruction packet. You can maybe take a closer look at that a bit later on. Just a heads up, the translation to English is very, very scattered, and it's quite a fiddly little thing to try and make full sense of. it has these two little protector pouches. So let's kind of look into it. So here within the main box you get two smaller boxes, and each of those holds the ice sticks. Now you can start to see a little bit more. Here we have the main, I guess the piece of resistance, the cooler. I quite like the color that the cooler has. It's kind of a nice kind of lime-ish kind of green, teal almost. So now you can kind of get a sense of what those ice sticks look like and how large or long they are in relation to the cooler. I was giving you a quick little tour of the box because it has a set of instructions on the back. I'll take a look at those later on. So now we can kind of open up the unit. So when it ships, the ice cube holder is sitting inside the unit there with a little bit of a protective foam. And then funnily enough, it's been kind of labeled with these very simple, almost homemade labels. One basically says it's the medicine tray, and the other one says it's the ice sort of tray. So that's the ice tray tube. So you're supposed to put sort of iced water down there, or crushed ice or something, if you got the right sort of size. And then you'll see that there's a sort of a compartment that's connected to it. It took me a moment to figure out exactly how to do it, but you basically pry it apart sideways and it will sort of disconnect. And that sort of thing on the side, you're supposed to use that to load it up with your various medicine vials. So this piece is supposed to be for emergency use. So I was trying to see if you could just pop an ice thing in there, but it unfortunately doesn't quite fit, and it gets slightly stuck. So I had to go off camera there and quickly pried it out with a pair of light pliers. That's what all that looks like. Yeah, so that's basically it. That's basically everything that you get in that box. And so now in a bit we'll do a little bit of testing and see what it can do. So I tried to put everything side by side there, so you can kind of see that the container's about 9 inches. The little ice cube holders they're about sort of just around 8. So here's a couple of pen examples. I have Wegovy pens and Zepbound pens, so I'll put those in the image here so you can get a sense of the size of everything. The Wegovy pen fits reasonably well in the mini pouch. I would say maybe be careful of not accidentally pulling off the cap. I was sensing that it was quite a little bit tight, so I decided to reverse it into the to the little pouch there so that I could sort of squeeze it out later without accidentally pulling the cap. These are, of course, used products, so these are just for show. So don't panic. I'm not wasting any meds here, of course. So here you can kind of see the other pouch has a little bit more room. I was playing around with it. You can get a couple of Zepbound pens in there. Probably not more than 2, maybe 3 if you sort of jigsaw puzzle it, but I'd say, you know, two to be comfortable. And then you can actually fit a lot of wegovy pens in there. I only have four pens for the demonstration, but you can get four pens in there. So I'm not sure if that's helpful to you, but in case you were wondering what you might be able to do with those little pouches, I guess they give them a little bit of thermal protection, you know, a little bit of padding when you pack. I'm not sure. It's a very thin material, so I'm not sure that it's going to be a significant kind of thing. All right, cool. Well, so that's kind of the product tour. So let's kind of keep going. So if you wanted to look at those instruction brochures a little bit more closely, here's a close-up of those. You can pause this screen if you want to kind of try and read those. As I mentioned, it was a little bit on the scattered side in terms of translation to English, but I sort of got the gist of it. Basically, after you've frozen those gel columns, you know, for at least 6 hours or more. For my experiment, I did overnight. You leave them out for about 7 to 10 minutes to let them sort of warm up, and then basically you use them. But there's some odd instructions that I was debating exactly what they mean. Maybe you can leave a comment about that if you can interpret them. And then this is sort of a warranty certificate, and it has a customer support, and it says to contact an email, but the email says @gmail.com and seems to be kind of missing the rest. And then this product has obviously gone through some amazing quality inspection and has a certificate by inspector number 1. So I'm so excited to see that. Makes me feel very confident that I have a really good product now. Anyway, all right, I'm being silly. Let's keep going. So here's just to kind of take a look at the how much the container can kind of hold. So in the testing, I'm basically going to use 2 ice packs. I think that's sort of the best trade-off of how much time you need to travel versus how much space you might get to to store pens. So when you use 2, I think I only have 4, but I'm estimating I think you can get about 6 wegovy pens in there. So that kind of gives you an idea of that. And then for the Zepbound pens, they have that tricky little base, triangular base that takes up some space. So there's not quite as much room, but you can basically put two pens in the downward position, and it's a little bit tight to put 3 pens. You can kind of see that it kind of gets a bit messy, and the pens will likely kind of push onto the ice and stuff. And so actually inverting the 3rd pen gives you a little bit more of a packing stability, and then you can actually put a 4th pen in position, So you can kind of see roughly how that looks. There isn't room for more. And what I think is quite good about that there is that the base of the pen pushes the ice sticks to the side so it sort of makes sure that the ice sticks are not directly touching the drug product in the drug product area of the pen, which is sort of that transparent area that you can kind of see. So let's keep on going. I also spent a bit of time just checking out that ice cube tray. I didn't do too much with it, but I just wanted to make sure that when it was filled with water, it didn't leak. So I did test that, and the answer is yes, it does not leak. It seems to have a pretty good watertight seal when you fill it up. So in case that's a question, now you have the answer to that. So now for the main experiment. So this kind of just gives you a nice little overview of the setup. So again, I'm always using the SwitchBot temperature probes, which I like a lot. I have 3 set up on the outside of the container that's in the heating chamber that I have to simulate different ambient temperatures. I'm actually using a Viva reptile incubator for this. So I have temperature sensors at different heights and positions just to make sure that I know exactly what the temperature is at the base, the mid and the top of the container. And then inside the container I used 2 temperature sensors attached to the Zepbound pens. One Zepbound pen I placed in the downward orientation, and one Zepbound pen I placed in an upwards orientation, just to kind of see if there was a sort of a temperature difference between those 2 locations. There isn't room for more pens when you also include the temperature sensors. So okay, and all of this is I use a calibrated thermometer to make sure everything's calibrated. So let's take a look. So here's the results basically. So the purple graph is the temperature of the probe that's in the lower section of the container, and then the blue probe is the temperature in the upper section of the container. So you can actually see there's quite a big difference between the 2. So overall, it seems to take around 31-ish hours to reach that sort of critical insulin temperature, in sort of the 29 C, maybe 86, 87 Fahrenheit zone. But most noteworthy is, so the lower container stays below 46 Fahrenheit for about 1,000 minutes, which is 16 hours. The upper container stays below 46 Fahrenheit for about 400 minutes or 4 hours. So you can actually see very quickly that the lid of this product is not a very good insulator. It's really just kind of thermally venting out, and so if you are going to use this product, be very careful about storing medicine in the upper section of the container, because it will be much warmer than the lower section. And so that might be a bit of a disadvantage in terms of how much room you actually have for really making sure your medicine is protected. On the plus side, the product doesn't seem to get exposed to freezing temperatures below 32, but just noted that for a period of about 250 minutes, the temperature of the lower chamber was below 36 Fahrenheit for a period of time, 250 minutes. So that is off-label from the typical instructions that you get to keep it between 36 and 46. So that's basically it. The ambient incubator temperature here was, I kept it basically at 85 Fahrenheit, and had that at that temperature throughout, so you can kind of get an idea of how it performs relative to the claims. So I think this could have potential for a local trip around California. I don't think it has enough cooling power to do a kind of a around the US type trip, and it definitely is not going to have enough cooling power to do international travel. Regarding the claim, I mean, it claimed that it could stay at 2 to 8 for 18 hours. It wasn't able to do that. By hour 16, the lower chamber was beyond that. And then actually by hour 6, the upper temperature of the chamber was beyond that. So it's basically not able to perform to the claimed specifications. And then to give it some credit though, it did hold itself well overall for staying below sort of 36 or 26 degrees centigrade, depending on what your mark is. And so it went out to 31. It went out to 31 hours or more with that. So I'm going to let it pass that test. It seemed to do well maybe as an emergency cooler to protect your medicine if all else fails. But I think there are kind of much better products that are out there, frankly, when you sort of do a head-to-head comparison. In terms of what I think of the design, I think the weak points, the container cap, it appears to be very poorly insulated, and so it sort of loses its the heat convects pretty quickly, or the cooling kind of convects pretty quickly out of the unit. So something to think about. The ice tub is an interesting concept in an emergency, but I would say maybe just be careful about whether if you put your product right next to ice, it might actually expose it to freezing. So not sure about that one. I didn't have the time to test that claim to see what it actually would do, so just a cautionary note there. So that's really it. So I hope this video helps. This wasn't a product that was a main focus. I picked it up for a good price over the winter holidays, funnily enough, and I had it sitting around and I hadn't had a time to test it, so I had a moment this week to kind of tinker with it. So this was just a little thing on the side. I'm not going to make too big of a deal with it. I wasn't, I didn't have high expectations to begin with, and so I think my suspicions were correct on this one. So, as always, yeah, thanks a lot for watching this channel. I hope this was helpful. Please, like the videos and subscribe if you want to keep a pulse on what's to come. I've actually got a really big project coming up with a Yeti Rambler, and so stay tuned for that. I've got some I think some pretty cool stuff that you're gonna enjoy. So that's it from me. Thank you for your time.